Hello everyone, my name is Swapnil Karkare and I am here to talk about economics. Let us continue the topic of unemployment which we had started the last topic. Why it is so important that each and every Indian, whether you are employed or unemployed, that this topic should bother you. Why? Before that, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and hit that like button too. According to latest Mint article, India's working age population share will peak in 2034. That means we have 10 years more where our share of working age population, that is from year 15 to year 64, will keep on increasing. Here we are talking about proportions or share of working age population to the entire population and not the absolute numbers, that the people or the population will start falling. No, that is not the case. We are just talking about the proportion of young people or the working age people to the entire population. And after 2034, the proportion of senior citizens in the country will be rising. We all like to compare ourselves with China. So why not take that into account and compare us with China in the terms of demographic dividend and how things happened in China after they started peaking out in 2009 and how the economy has performed today and so on and so forth. Let us see the numbers. China peaked at 2009, the same thing that we will be experiencing in 2034. And it is believed that after 2009, it took around 10-15 years to see the impact on the China's population and China's economic growth too. So, by that logic, we can roughly assume that after 10 years from India's peak, which will be around, say, 2045 or something around that, we will also see some significant changes in our demography, in our population composition, and also on our economic performance. So, what kind of impact are we really talking about? Let's see what happened in China through this BBC article. Over the next decade, about 300 million people who are currently aged 50 to 60 are set to leave the Chinese workforce. This is the country's largest age group, nearly equivalent to the size of US population. That means pensions and old age care will be some sort of creepy problems in everyone's lives going ahead because people are not going to die sooner. Yeah, let me be blunt, because the life expectancy is going to be higher and higher going ahead. Probably after 20-30 years from now, everyone will start living until the age of 100. So that means once you are retired after 60 or 65, you will have 40 years to live. I don't know if we have to be happy or scared of this fact because there are many things that might change if we start living longer. What it says further, let's see. It was a son or daughter's duty to look after aging parents, but there are fewer sons and daughters for aging parents to rely on. One reason is the one child diktat, which prevented couples from having two or more children between 1980 to 2015. But the pension fund could run out of money by 2035, according to the state run Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. That was a 2019 estimate before the pandemic shutdowns, which hit China's economy hard. What does this mean? Firstly, they are talking about some culture, which is very much similar to India, that children take care of the old parents. That's normal in India, that's normal in most Asian countries. Plus, now, due to one child policy in China, their fertility rates have gone down. So there are now lesser children to look after those old parents. In India too, we are experiencing declining fertility rates. That means we also have started having lesser kids or lesser babies. In India, it is not about the one child policy. It is about economic prosperity. The rationale of everything lies in a theory of fertility. That means as the economy starts progressing, we start having lesser kids because of many reasons, and I don't want to get into that, but that is the theory. If you understand Marathi, you can check out my Econ Gali Marathi podcast, and I had made a similar topic on theory of fertility a long time ago. So if it is possible for you to listen to that, please do listen to that. Otherwise, you can also check the sources which I have quoted there, and then you can start your study of theory of fertility after that. So fertility is down, aging is rising, and people are going to live longer. That means we need to focus on old age healthcare, infrastructure, money angle, and each and everything. So what can be done? One way to tackle this problem is increasing retirement age. That is very much into consideration for in all advanced economies nowadays. Even China is kind of considering that the retirement age should be like 70 or something like that. There might be a possibility that many countries will start increasing that, and there will be probably no limit. As long as you are fit, as long as you can work, you may work. There is no upper end to the retirement age. That can be a significant development in most advanced economies. But what impact will it have on developing economies where the population is rising, where the working age population is also high? What will happen to them? So imagine the SBI staff not retiring at all. So yeah, there is one angle of productivity and efficiency, but there is important angle of employment. If retirement age is higher in India, there is a chance that employment generation, and especially the youth employment problem which we are kind of dealing nowadays, will be even more scary. And that is what China is also kind of having this kind of problem. And I don't know what is China going to do. I don't know what India can do or should do. But obviously, at the current juncture, increasing retirement age will be a problem for India and China both. Now let us speed up the things, and let's move on to different kind of data. We are going to look at old age dependency ratio. This is what the data tells us. Currently, China's old age dependency ratio is 20%. That means there are 5 working age people to cover for one retired person. Looking from another angle, it also means that 5 people's funds, taxes, or savings protect one retired person. In India, the dependency ratio is 10%. That means 10 working people cover for one retired person. Currently, we are better than China. But there's some twist in this data. I have created a framework to understand this problem in a different way. Assume that we are in 2023 because that is the latest data we have until now, and we are going to peak in 2034. So that means we have 11 more years to peak. Now, instead of analyzing what India is today versus China of today, why not analyze India 11 years before peak versus China 11 years before peak, and then move our analysis similar for different kinds of ratios. Does it sound good? I took India's 2023 data, which is 11 years before peak, then 2034, which is India's peak, and 2045, which is 11 years after peak. For China, I took 1998 data, that is 11 years before peak of China's, then 2009, which is the peak, and 2020, which is 11 years after peak. So coincidentally, India's 11 years after peak, which is 2045, kind of is closer to our target of becoming a developed economy. And China's 11 years after peak, that is 2020, is the COVID year, which kind of hit the Chinese economy massively. So let's compare this data. 11 years before peak, India and China both had the same ratio, that is around 10%, which is basically saying 10 working age people cover for one retired person. At peak, India will reach around 14%, which is in 2034. Then China's peak at 12% in 2009. After 11 years from peak, both China and India will be around the similar levels. It is entirely right that what happens in China or what happened in China will not probably happen in India. Yeah, but there are some lessons that we can learn. If the China's economy tells us something, if the data from China tells us something, why not learn from them? Why not prepare for something which is worse, or that kind of attitude? So please don't enter into too much of the details of this kind of comparison, like, oh, this is something different, that is something different. So that is one thing. Second is that Chinese journey will help us navigate better and will help us prepare better. That's what I feel. Third, that I understand that the one child policy probably was one major driving factor behind the changing Chinese demography. Uh, but I feel it is better to prepare for the worst. Lastly, we need to start thinking about our senior citizens, not today's, but future senior citizens. So if we are around my age, that is 30 years from now, we will all become senior citizens, which is around 2050. So that is the year, which is like probably 15 to 20 years post our peak, right? So that will be a really, really grave problem if we are sitting in 2050. Then aging would have hit us very hard. And here I'm not even talking about, oh, our future generations are going to suffer. No, 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 no. It's not our grandchildren or someone. It's us who are going to hit very hard, because that is the time where India will be probably aging at a faster rate, and probably we wouldn't have hit our development target too. I'm preparing for the worst here, so please keep that in mind. Don't call me anti-national. So these are some thoughts. Now let us move ahead with some different data. First, we are talking about employment and unemployment scenarios. So the most important data is labor force participation rate. So let us check that out. What happened in China and what is happening in India. In 1998, China's labor force participation rate, which is basically how much proportion of population is willing to work. It includes employed as well as unemployed. In 1998, China's LFPR or labor force participation rate was around 83%. That means 83% people were willing to work 11 years before the peak. Today, which is 2023, in India, LFPR is 56%. That is 25% lesser public in India are willing to work before reaching peak. So this is a very vast difference between India and China. And what happened after 1998 in China? LFPR started coming down after 1998. Even at the peak level at 2009, LFPR in China was below 1998 levels. So that means in India, there are chances that at peak, which is 2034, the LFPR will not be same. Probably it might have fallen down. Even if it doesn't decline, if it is at the same level, that is around 56%, then also it is kind of scary. And mind you, from 1998 to 2018, it was China's decade from 11 years before the peak to probably 11 years after the peak. Even in that period, their labor force participation started declining. If the same trend continues in India, what will happen? And we believe that the next decade will be India's decade. That means our growth rates will be very high, and that means probably our employment generation problem would also be kind of solved, right? But going by China's experience, that doesn't seem to tally. The data of growth and LFPR doesn't go hand in hand. Now, a higher population means more stomachs to fill, correct? But higher population also means more brains, more hands, and more legs that can work. But considering these numbers, if people are not willing to work, if people are not getting gainful employment, if the LFPR is low and the aging is higher, that means even if in future 50% of population is only ready to work, then that means the working class, the people who are working, the 50% who are working, will not only have to bear the burden of old age people in India, but also those who are not working, which is probably one of the highest component. When China peaked, more than two-thirds of people were working or willing to work in China. In India, that ratio is slightly more than half today. So that makes things pretty dicey. Now let us talk about our older folks. Someday it's gonna be you and I in that position. So what would we need when we get older? One is pension, and here I'm not going into conversation of government should do the pensions or private sector should manage it. That is the different kind of conversation which we can have later. And second is the infrastructure, the healthcare, the facilities for old age, so on and so forth, right? So let's start talking about pensions first. In India, pension markets are not developed. Even in China, it is like more or less similarly. Largely, it is the government who does pensions. Okay, so if we look at China's tax revenue to GDP data, it is again shocking. This ratio started falling off the cliff from 2011-12 onwards. That means a few years after the peak. So from 2034 onwards, will India face the similar problem? Who knows? But if that happens, that means probably the government would have to squeeze more taxes from fewer people who are working. So that is again a kind of problematic scenario. By the way, one thing that India did very good in back in 2000s was the new pension scheme, where we converted from defined benefit pension plan to defined contribution pension plan. Defined benefit means the benefits are defined. How much pension you are going to get is defined, is clear while you are working. But that is not the case with defined contribution. Defined contribution is basically you have to contribute for your pension. So how much you will get after retirement will depend on how much you have contributed while you were working. So the national pension scheme started in 2004. That means if a person who has joined government services in December 2003, he or she will get government supported pensions. But the one who has joined after 1st January 2004 will not get that kind of pension. It depends on how much you have contributed. But wait, it is good that we have solved this problem, but there is a bit more maths that need to be done. If a graduate of 22-year-old have joined the government in 2003 and is a permanent employee, he will retire by the age 60. That means in the year around 2041. So until 2041, those fellows are going to be paid by government. So now, bringing everything together, what we can expect from our politicians. Last year, there were talks about reintroducing old pension scheme, that is the defined benefit kind of scheme. If tomorrow we go back and reintroduce it for pan-India level, it will be a biggest financial blunder. But it is not just about pensions. It is also about old age care facilities and infrastructure and public health care and so on and so forth. For that too, we need funds. Japan is an interesting case where they have faced all these kinds of problems and they are handling it pretty much okayish. But one thing that happened in Japan is they became developed before starting, having these kinds of problems. So that development quotient was on their side. So the problems in China as well as India are far more worse because we have not reached development level today, and probably and who knows about tomorrow, right? Today, basically from India's context, we have to employ our youth because these youth become tomorrow's senior citizens. And if tomorrow's senior citizens are poor and not having enough money, then their problems will be probably different. And probably we might also go back to old age pension scheme because probably today jobs are a problem in India, and if they are unemployed, they will start demanding for good pension amounts also. So today we have to employ people. Today we have to give them jobs so that tomorrow or the future of India is secure financially. Another point that I would like to highlight is decreasing fertility rate. We have discussed fertility rate, I know, but within India, different states have different things going on. Especially Bihar and Uttar Pradesh, the fertility rate is around 3. So what does that mean? South and West are aging, North and East are not. Then that means the number of working age population in the West and South will slowly become less. But the development can continue because the people from North and East will kind of migrate and work, and they will probably have a good economic growth also. But what are we seeing currently? Politicians are introducing reservations based on what state you belong to, so on and so forth. Religion, caste, all those things are coming ahead. That will complicate matters because if the state in West and state in South start, such kind of reservations, that is going to hamper their economy. Internal migration kind of balances our development, balances growth in different states in different ways. right? If some states stop that, then the entire state will probably see some, tectonic movements. Can we expect something better from our politicians now? Hopefully. There is another thing that politicians are doing nowadays, and that is giving more handouts to unemployed people. Like there are many yojanas, right? Everyone might have heard one or the other in their state. Again, handouts are a temporary solution, not a permanent thing. But in India, we kind of make it permanent. So again, that is a problem. People need jobs, period. And lastly, the technology, the AI, will it hamper? If everything comes together, then that might make a very dystopian kind of thing in India. So I come from very optimistic point of view that okay, one kind of jobs will get out, but like there will be a generation of newer kinds of jobs. So that is something a different topic. But just like to make a comprehensive topic, I would like to just add these things here. So, what needs to be done? That is the bigger and biggest question now. If you are a government, start focusing, start thinking, start investing in education, in skill development, and all those things. Upgrading syllabus, upgrading the way you teach in the government schools, in the private schools, and everywhere. That needs to be changed. Modi government had 10 years to reform education, sadly didn't move that much of a needle in the last 10 years, and we have lost that decade, to be very specific. We have lost many decades before that, but this decade also is kind of lost. Second thing I would like to encourage is to start more privatization in this sector. I would like to quote Amit Verma's and Ajay Shah's episode on education on Everything is Everything podcast. You can watch it on YouTube. I would like to just quote some of the things that they have talked about, that privatization does not mean like those five-star kind of schools. Yeah, probably they are also required, but more what we need to do is more budget private schools. Yes, that also exists. And the things that these guys have talked about in the podcast is basically like Indian parents have lost faith in government schools. They want to make their kids' future better. So they are putting their kids in private schools and not public school, where the education is free, by the way. So fixing public schools is kind of Herculean task. So why not use something called as school coupons, where government gives coupons to every parent, and that parent decides where to admit their kid. It could be private school, it could be public school, and in a way that education becomes free for that kid. So that is point number one. Second, if you are a parent or a student, what should you do? Upgrade skills as much possible. Don't rely on government teachers magical things to change the fortunes. You have to think about yourself. Third, if you are currently employed somewhere, think about the replacement angle, which is basically what are the chances of you getting replaced due to lack of skills that are required in future or technology. So that is, yes, that is the active thinking that everyone must have to do from now onwards, because the world is moving so fast. Then fourth, if you are a business person or a budding entrepreneur, you need to probably start thinking about old age people, senior citizens. So there was one app I remember launched a few years ago, a dating app for senior citizens, right? So that is one hint. Think about these kinds of things more innovatively. So instead of probably uh, babies clothing shop, you might have to think of the senior citizens clothing shop. All those things can be there, and they are going to last longer than the baby's shop. And yes, you can export abroad also, because aging, right? And lastly, if you are already existing entrepreneurs, have a set business, what you can do is you can communicate with government what things are required for upskilling people, what things are required for the education, which things can be added, which things can be deleted. You can have that active communication with the government wherever possible. I know it is difficult, but if possible, you can probably take some steps. And one such idea that I have, like say for example, you are an IT company, collaborate with other IT companies and probably start a masterclass, start a course, start something that can upskill people, and directly you can hire from them. So it is much better for you guys also to probably think in these ways, instead of relying on one particular degree, one particular certificate of a particular candidate. It is much safer and easier to probably devise some kind of mechanism like this. So that is one way in which we can solve the skilling problem as well as employment problem in India. Now I think I have finished my rant, and I don't want to paint a dystopian picture. Sorry for that if I have made it for you like that. But these are the certain things that worry me a lot when we start talking about unemployment and aging and everything. So hopefully it is a comprehensive topic about aging, about unemployment, and what steps one can take or what lessons one can draw for oneself or for the society at large. That's it for now. Thank you.